Alright, so this is in no way at all similar to any content that I've ever done on the channel, but I have decided that my goal is not to become a YouTube super sensation star. My goal is to have a place where I can send things out to the world when I create them. Not that I think that they're going to change the world or have some great lasting positive impact, but just the fact that the things that I have done are out there gives a sense of contribution to society. I don't know. It's a little bit more interactive than what I do on a daily basis of cleaning up bodily fluids. So anyways, this is called Zentangle doodling. I'm sure many of you have seen this kind of a doodle form before, but this is something that I picked up probably like 10 years ago is when I saw it for the first time, and then really started to dive into it a few years ago when I found a library book with different pattern options. And then since then, this has become my go-to activity during speeches or church, or when we're watching a long movie, or I just need something to do with my hands in social situations, basically. I really enjoy drawing these little flowers. I've never really been able to decide if they are roses or peonies or carnations, but really they just start with like a usually 3-pointed Morpheus shape in the center, and then I add squiggly lines bridging more and more and more and more of the voids until I feel like it is a flower-ish type shape. So the foundation of Zentangle doodling is that you are supposed to take a large open area and then divide it into smaller sections. I prefer to use a mix of geometric and organic shapes so that it's not all like grid-like and it's not all whimsy flowy. I like kind of a contrast mix between the two. And then once you've created your borders, then you go ahead and in each smaller section, create some sort of pattern or image or repetitive theme to fill that section. Then you're supposed to go in within that section and create shading and details. The way my brain works is I like to fill in a basic pattern for each of these little sections before I start adding all of the details and shading. The reason I do that is because I like to have a variety of weighted sections. So like some sections are going to be darker and heavier and busier, while others are going to have more negative space or more color. Some of them are going to have more intense patterns, while others will be simpler. And when I do the basic outlines, the basic shapes, the basic doodles in every section, then I can zoom out and see as a whole which areas feel unbalanced and start to add more shading and more details in that area. So as you can tell by now, it is definitely more of a spring themed Zentangle for this one, which is interesting because I'm doodling this in June. Maybe it's because I live in Phoenix and so it's like 100 and something degrees outside, and I'm longing for the days of just like beautiful spring weather where we can just be outside all day, all the time for months on end. All right, so now you can kind of see the whole general vibe where everything is filled in. But right now it's a lot of thin lines filling up a large space, so it looks a little bit more chaotic to the eye. This is when I like to go through and add thicker boundary lines between the sections. I feel like it gives it a stained glass look, which I really enjoy, and it also gives a little bit more definition on guiding the eye from section to section and where to go. This one is one of my favorites on the page, I think, actually. When you zoom out, it gives like this orby 3D kind of effect. And because it's such a small area, it's just a really cool element on the page that I love. So now is when I get to start having fun and adding in a lot of shading and details, which will add dimension to the piece. I usually do these in like analog format, as in like I have my actual journal and my actual pen in my hand and I do them on the page, but I went ahead and did these digitally. And the nice thing about that is that I can actually use the magic selector tool to just select that section, meaning that when I do these long lines, it doesn't matter if it overflows into another area because it won't draw in that area. And when I do straight lines, I can actually make them straight. And I know part of the whole Zentangle vibe is that where it's just supposed to add to the beauty of the inconsistency. And I feel like there's enough inconsistency happening here that I don't feel super bad for using the straight lines and the digital hacks. We are full on embracing this Easter spring theme, I guess at this point. We have bird feathers, we have bunny ears, and now we're going to do Easter eggs. I did actually just watch a video from Drawing with Waffles. I don't know if you guys have ever watched that channel. Highly recommend. She is glorious. And she just did a video in the last few months where she painted wooden eggs, and they just looked so whimsy and like Scandinavian-ish and just cohesive and lovely, and I loved them. So I guess I'm feeling inspired by that. But I just really loved that the more details she added, the more whimsy it became. One of the struggles that I've had with art is knowing when to stop. As a kid, I would just keep adding more letters and more shapes and more pictures and more detail and more glitter and more glue, and it just was always too much and looked just wild chaos. And so then the next phase of my life in art was super minimalism, trying to keep things very chill, very calm, very basic so that it would be timeless. And now when I do art, it's kind of trying to find a mix between the two, where it's timeless, something that I'll enjoy for years to come, but also something that reflects my style now and things that I just enjoy and makes me happy. But sometimes when I add too much detail, it no longer makes me happy. So it's nice to see videos like the one from Drawing with Waffles. By the way, it is with waffles. Like, I'm not saying it weird. That's like legitimately how it's spelled. But it's good to see examples like that where you can tastefully add more detail and it will still look tasteful. So the pen that I'm using really super struggles with just doing a dot. It does a lot better if I place the tip down and then wiggle it around a little bit, but that creates too thick of a spot. And so I prefer being able to just doot like you would with a marker. You just tap it down and it creates a dot. But you can see it has issues where I'll tap down, it doesn't actually make the mark, and then I tap down another spot and it just assumes that I'm dragging between those two spots that it registered and creates a line, which is super annoying. So I have to keep doing the undo feature, which means breaking the flow, going up into the tool options. I wish that my pen was more customizable to where I could make one of the buttons be Control-Z. Like, that would be so helpful. But alas, it does not. And for how often I do this, it is not worth spending more money on that. I can handle going to edit undo. Usually when I Zentangle, I get a boxy section, a circle section, a triangle section, a shell section, like these little scale kind of a pattern. I really like these. I feel like they're so versatile and how you line them up gives such a completely different vibe. So they make me happy. I do think it would be interesting to try doing a Zentangle where instead of doing the variety of different shapes like I usually do, like doing an exploration in like just boxy type sections or just circular sections. And seeing how that affects the different patterns that I come up with and maybe encourages more creativity. When you get a Zentangle inspiration book from the library, a lot of times it's just pages with squares, and every square has a different pattern or icon or image that you can try to replicate. And sometimes they'll break it down like step by step how to get to it, which is really helpful in some of the more complicated circumstances. This one right here, I really like how filling in all that white space with squiggles really changes it from being a Dr. Seuss kind of a vibe to more of a chain link earring jewelry kind of a vibe. And so adding different shadings and whatnot can really change a pattern. I think that in original Zentangling, it's supposed to be one color or one pen, and you use that one tool that you're using to create the shading. But I really like the look of two-tone, and I thought that this one, since it was Eastery, could use a brighter pastel-y color to complement this nice cool tone green that we've got as the base. I will say though that adding the second color definitely is easier digitally because I can just go through and select all of the white and then paintbrush in or paint bucket just total fill these different areas a lot quicker than with a standard pencil and paper, which I actually don't know if that's a positive or a negative aspect of this. just because you do want it to be a process. You do want it to take a little longer to lose yourself in the moment. But I feel like I still am losing myself in the process. It's just that the process doesn't take quite as long, which in this world of raising a toddler and having very little me time, I feel like it's a worthy shortcut to take because I'm still getting in the creative process. I'm still losing myself mentally in the Zen mode. I just don't have as much time to dedicate to that Zen mode as I might have had a couple years ago. As I start getting to this stage of fine-tuning the different sections, I really start to fill in a lot of the blank areas. Because with Zentangle doodling, I want the whole page to feel fascinating and intricate and not just swaths of uncolored, undrawn area. And so with this one, with the bunny ears, with the eggs, there's just a lot more detail that needs to be added. And sometimes it goes really well, like these leaves turned out well. Adding the carrots was funky and quirky, but it worked in the bunny section. And then in the egg section, I ended up adding like a tulip motif, which also worked thematically and great. Where it didn't work so well is the lines with the little chicken wire lines. I was like, it looks too empty and too basic in the middle of all of these exciting, interesting sections. So I added these little circles and little swirlies inside them, and they really just look dumb. And I understand that this is digital art, so I really could go back and change it pretty easily, but we all know I'm not going to. And so now I just have to live with the fact that I made this terrible decision. And then as I was doing this and hating this in the moment, I was like, well, let me just add back in those little chicken wire scratch marks and it'll make it better. And it kind of helped. But man, it's just not my finest, y'all. And this egg really bothered me. It looked like an eyeball with just wrinkly eye socket stuff happening. I tried so many things to fix this. I liked the idea of doing like a vine motif, except for the white and the blue don't have a lot of contrast between each other. So I got rid of a couple of the wrinkles on either side of the eye and it still looks like an eye. So I made them into vines. Still looks like an eyeball. But I realized the issue is the flower in the center. So we're gonna thin out those petals. And when you zoom out, it's not the first thing you see, but like it is not the best egg. Again, with this blocky fill of the entire background being blue, I struggled with it in the same way that I struggled with the bunny section, to where it's just a big block of this accent color, which felt too in your face when you look at the whole picture. But these are the tulips I was talking about. I just think that they turned out so basic and chill and cute. It was a great way to fill the space between the eggs. Et voilà, the masterpiece. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing the Zentangle process and what it looks like, what it feels like, the different thoughts that go through my head as I create it. I'm sure that someone else doing the exact same process would have a completely different approach to it, which I think is a fun part about art. I'll probably do a couple more of these just because they're fun and a great quick way to add some creative energy to my days. And maybe next time grab a pen and paper and just doodle with me.